Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some people.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 18th of July 2020, we look at entitlement. E-N-T-I-T-L-E-M-E-N-T, entitlement, with the view being that no one, irrespective of who they are, has an entitlement to rule the country and people of St Vincent and the Grenadines. The Cambridge Dictionary defines entitlement as something that you have a right to do or have, or the right to do or have something. That definition tells us that entitlement is a right which someone has to have something. The definition tells us that entitlement is a right which someone has to do something. It is with that definition in mind why we, on A View from the Outside, say that no one has an entitlement, despite what they may say, to rule St Vincent and the Grenadines. And by that we mean that no one, irrespective of who that person is, has the right to rule our blessed country. The 18th century poet William Cowper wrote the following opening four lines of a poem called The Solitude of Alexander Selkirk. And these are the lines. I am monarch of all I survey. My right there is none to dispute. From the centre all round to the sea, I am lord of the foul and the brute. That poem by William Cowper is based on the life of a Scottish seaman, Alexander Selkirk, who lived in solitude. He lived alone on an island for 4 years on one of the Pacific Islands. Being alone for 4 years on the island, he was entitled to say that he was monarch or king of everything around him, all that he surveyed, all that he could see. Being alone for 4 years on the island, he was entitled to say that there was no one to dispute his right, because there was no one. He was alone. In those circumstances, Alexander Selkirk had an entitlement to rule that island. He had an entitlement to be the lord, as he put it, of the foul and the brute on that island. Those circumstances which existed in Alexander Selkirk's world do not exist in St Vincent and the Grenadines. And so, no one has any such right in our blessed country. There are some in the country, in St Vincent and the Grenadines, who believe that they have that right. They believe that, like Alexander Selkirk all those centuries ago on that Pacific island, they are monarch of all they survey, so much so that they have ignominiously made similar pronouncements, such as being the prime minister of every square inch of St Vincent and the Grenadines. They believe that they and members of their family have an entitlement to rule St Vincent and the Grenadines. They believe that no one has a right to question or dispute anything they say. They believe that no one has the right to expect or demand accountability. They believe that they have the right or entitlement to dictate to every Vincentian. Vincentians, that is not the case. No one has any such right. No one has any such entitlement, and it is up to you, it is up to all of us to ensure that those who harbor and live out that belief are prevented from continuing along that path. Vincentians, the time has come for all of us to put an end to those who parade around as if they are monarch of all they survey, who believe that we are all subjects and subordinates on their plantation. The time has come for all of us to recognize and take action to stop those who believe that they have an entitlement to abuse the women, girls, and boys of our country. The time has come for all of us to end the emasculation of our men. For too long now, our men, their independence has been whittled away, making them totally dependent in order to try to ensure their own survival and the survival of their families. We must stop those who believe that they have an entitlement to subject our young people to perform all sorts of indignities to get a job or a scholarship. We must stop those who believe they had an entitlement to use, abuse, and then destroy Yogi Farrell. Yogi Farrell, whose ruination and destruction is now callously on display in their twisted way to silence others. We must ensure that other young women in St Vincent and the Grenadines are not treated that way. We must stop them. They have no such entitlement. We must put an end to the reign of those who are allegedly engaged in having a harem of young girls, known as Parliament girls, who they subject to their every whim and fancy. We must stop those who are allegedly involved in the people trafficking of our Vincentian women, girls, and boys. Vincentians, the time has come for all of us to recognize and take action to stop those who believe that they have an entitlement to create a dynasty in our country. No such entitlement exists to anyone in our country. No one has an entitlement to pass on the rulership of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to their son or daughter. No such right exists in the laws of the country. Therefore, it is of vital importance that all of us as Vincentians raise awareness and educate our people, each one teach one, to prevent it from happening. Vincentians, in this democracy of ours, no one has an entitlement to rule forever. Our system of democracy gives all of us the right to determine who governs us and for how long. When we see those who are trying to usurp your will, our will, the will of the people, then it becomes a necessity for us to stop them. We must let them know that they have no such entitlement. When we see attempts to corrupt the electoral process, including the process of registering voters, allegedly in an effort to create the atmosphere for further corruption, to allow the continuation of a rulership, we must let the perpetrators know that no one has an entitlement to corrupt the laws of our land. No one has an entitlement to produce inducements in the form of lumber, cement, and galvanize in the effort to secure votes to keep them in power. Vincentians, it is time for all of us to remember that with St. Vincent and the Grenadines being a democracy, no one has an entitlement to curtail the freedom of others. There are simply too many examples where freedom is under attack. Otto Sam, Joseph Bowen, Paul Imad Scruggs, Luzette King, Kenson King, and many others have fallen victims to such attack on their freedom of speech. Their experiences of victimization, dismissal, and arrest must be seen against the backdrop where others are unleashed to go on the airwaves to denigrate, disparage, and spew bile without any restraint or sanction. No one should be allowed to feel that they have any such entitlement, and it is crucial that we let them know that. In this democracy of ours, no one has an entitlement to wantonly acquire the properties of the citizens of the country and refuse to pay them fair market price for their property. No one has an entitlement to ignore court orders to pay these people. Former Commissioner of Police, the late Randolph Toussaint, suffered that fate. And he suffered, and former parliamentarian Marcus de Freitas continues to suffer because someone seemingly believes that they have an entitlement to ignore a court order and refuse to pay them. No such entitlement exists in our country, and we must stop those who behave as if they have an entitlement, which they seem to think that they have. No one has an entitlement to go around threatening ordinary citizens, whether they be Rastafari or others, that they will compulsorily acquire their land if they refuse to sell at way below a fair or market value. No such entitlement exists to anyone in our country, and we must stop them. Those who go around threatening people with acquisition, we must stop them from doing so. We must stop them from continuing to pursue and harass Bigger Biggs. They have destroyed his multi-million-dollar business. They have interrupted his peace and security and have prevented him from having the quiet enjoyment of his property. They have even arrested him on his own land. They have no such entitlement to do that to any citizen. And we, as Vincentians, have a duty to ensure that they know that they have no such entitlement, and we must prevent them from doing so. No one has an entitlement to deny citizens of basic health care. No one has the right to subject our citizens to inadequate health care, especially when they and their families and others who participate in their banditry fly overseas to get the best health care possible. No one has an entitlement to impoverish a nation. No one has an entitlement to impoverish our nation, the nation of St Vincent and the Grenadines. And then, every 5 years, give out gifts, including lumber, cement, and galvanize. And now, what they crassly call love boxes in the effort to hoodwink the electorate of our country. No one has that entitlement. Vincentians, we, here on A View from the Outside, urge every one of you, everyone, in this election year, we urge you to take action and do what is necessary and right to ensure that we protect our democracy. Ensure that you register to vote and ensure that everyone of voting age registers to vote. Ensure that you record and report any and every irregularity which you observe. Let us ensure that when we go to the polls on election day, whenever that may be, we vote overwhelmingly to put a stop to anyone who feels that, like Alexander Selkirk all those hundreds of years ago, that they are the monarch of all they survey in St Vincent and the Grenadines. They are not. Let us ensure that we stop them from believing that we cannot dispute their right. We must let them know that they have no such entitlement. We must stop them. Vincentians, let them know that each and every Vincentian has the right to enjoy the fundamental rights and freedoms which are guaranteed by the Constitution of our country. We must let them know that no entitlement is bestowed on anyone to undermine, erode, or curtail those rights. No one has an entitlement to oppress us as a people. We must ensure that democracy lives and reigns for everyone in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And as you do that, as we all do that, let us gain hope from the words of the late civil rights leader, Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever. Oppressed people cannot remain oppressed forever." Vincentians, let us all become engaged with the process. Let us all become engaged in the process and stop anyone who feels they have an entitlement to continue to oppress us. Until next week, Randy and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page at A View from the Outside, and also visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Have a pleasant Saturday, have a wonderful Sunday, and have a productive week ahead with everyone making the effort to ensure that no one believe that they have an entitlement to rule our country. Let us make that effort, Vincentians. All the best to you, Randy, and the listeners.